Welcome back to the WatchGecko YouTube channel. Before we jump into the Yema review, we want to let you know about our new podcast. From thoughts on current happenings in the industry, to new releases, watch reviews, and of course general banter, come and join us on the new Time to Unwind podcast by WatchGecko, available now through your favourite podcast app. Far more often than not, a watch brand, a brand logo, or even just the mention of a brand name triggers a recollection in my mind of either knowing or seeing their watches in the past. I admit, this is a pretty oddly specific skill, but it is one that came in handy when Yema Watches came up in conversation recently. This is a watch brand that's been around since the 40s, but my main experience with them was seeing them exhibiting at a watch show in London, as well as being very effective storytellers on Instagram. But the brand is far more than an effective marketing team and nice images. Yema has an interesting history that we felt needed telling. It was only right we had some hands-on time with the brand. Fast forward a few weeks, and the Yema Superman 39mm was in front of me, and I instantly started kicking myself for not looking at the brand earlier. This now brings us right up to date, and where my hands-on time with the Superman really begins. To properly discuss the Superman we have with us today, we actually have to look back to 1963 and the birth of the model. This original model was released at a time when the demand for diving watches has exploded. The Superman though, with his looks that didn't break any moulds, did offer a unique bezel locking system. 9 out of 10 diving watches with rotating bezels will only rotate one way, and that's anti-clockwise. This is so if a bezel is accidentally moved during a dive, it can only result in the diver thinking they have less time remaining to dive rather than more. This is a great safety feature, however Yema took this one step further with the introduction of their unique bezel locking system. This works very simply, with a small metal clamp resting on the bezel, held on the watch by the crown. Once the crown is screwed into the case, the clamp is also tight on the bezel, meaning there's a zero chance of the bezel moving. A neat feature for 1963, and it's one that remains with the watch right up to today. This modern day version of the watch comes in either 41mm wide or 39mm. It's the latter you're seeing here, which has a thickness of 13mm and a lug to lug of 48mm. That thickness isn't all the case though. Most of it lives in the bezel and crystal, meaning the case that sits on your wrist is beautifully elegant. Elegant is not normally a word you'd expect to hear when talking about diving watches, but it really has its place when talking about the Superman. The elegance doesn't stop there however, as the shape of the case, the relationship the lugs have with the crown guard, and the polished finishing, all are simply incredibly charmful and sophisticated. Complementing this refined design is a screw down crown, a bezel that sits a part of the watch so well, and of course that locking mechanism at 3 o'clock. We also get a water resistance rating of 990 feet as seen on the dial, or 300 meters. Looking through that domed crystal, we see a glossy black dial with a date at 3, and super lumen over lume filling the hands and hour markers. The hands in this piece are another subtle sign that this watch has more of a story to tell. With a large hour hand for the minutes, and Yema's shovel second-hand design being transferred from the original. The movement powering the Superman 39 is a Sellita SW200. A movement that makes total sense here for the price point, the brand's values, and the quality of the watch. You get 28,800 vibrations per hour, 38 hours of power reserve, hacking, and a quick set date. You may have picked up on my hints throughout this review that I'm a fan of this watch. And you're right, I'm a big fan, and there are 3 main reasons why. To start with, the watch is 39mm wide, but it doesn't feel like a sub 40mm watch on the wrist. When compared to the Submariner's dimensions, they feel almost identical. The second reason I'm a big fan of the Superman is that elegancy I hinted at earlier. The curves of the case, the way the case moves from lugs to crown guard so easily and cleanly, and just how thin the watch feels on the wrist. Remember, this watch can go 300 meters deep without missing a beat. Most 300 meter watches at this price point can be quite brash and chunky, with an emphasis on really being a tool watch. This Superman is quite the opposite. It's got elegance, charm, and discreet style. If you had told me this watch was 100 meters water resistance, I would have probably nodded and said it made sense. But it's far more capable than that, which just makes it so much cooler. The last reason I'm a big fan of the watch is its under the radar personality. The phrase "if you know, you know" comes to mind. On the surface, it's a simple, elegant diving watch with a black on black design that is clearly made very well. However, if someone knows the history of the brand, or the little design touches that have a real meaning to them, the watch becomes infinitely more interesting. Watch specifications can be perceptive. Although the watch is technically 13mm tall, it wears far less than that. If you add this watch to your collection, just know you'll be getting an extremely wearable, slender, and considered piece. The lugs are nice and prominent on the watch as well. As we've said a few times over the countless watch reviews we've done, case width truly isn't everything. The lug to lug distance has an equally important visual value and should always be considered. I'll be honest, I haven't seen the 41mm version of the watch, but if you do normally wear 40mm to 41mm, the 39mm option will be perfect for your wrist. The case on the watch being fully polished wouldn't probably be my preference, however. See the Superman 39 sport a brushed case with polished edges rather than the full polish we see. The bezel lock was the final aspect of the watch I noticed a lot when using it. For many, a bezel is there for style, a part of the design and appeal of the watch. However, I like to use these old school pieces of technology as much as possible, so when I found myself having to unscrew the crown to move the bezel, it felt like there was an unnecessary barrier in my way. But this lock system is such a part of the watch's design language that if this was in my collection, I think I could let it slide. The Yema Superman comes in at a lug width of 19mm. This can be an issue, however we have a solid range of 19mm straps that will suit the vintage style of the watch really well. This is a range that always grows with our most popular straps, so be sure to check out the site to make this Yema, or any 90mm lug width watch, your own today. First up we have the genuine vintage Bond NATO by Geckota. This really is the combo to go for if you're looking to extract the historical importance of the watch. Once the vintage Bond with polished hardware is fitted to the watch, the reissue feel of the watch really jumps out. Channel your inner Bond and grab yourself a vintage Bond NATO today. The Radstock racing leather strap in vintage dark brown is the strap I wore the most on the Yema, and can you really blame me? This newer strap to the site is a match made in heaven for the Yema, with soft top grain leather and precise perforations, just adding enough of a hint at this watch's history. I'm really enjoying perforated straps at the moment, and the Radstock racing is ideal for vintage sports watches, or ones that take inspiration from past eras. The final choice is the Painswick leather in distressed grey, and this choice is a perfect option for daily wear. Grey is as versatile as the Superman is. It can be smart or casual incredibly easily, and the distressing adds some lovely texture to the combo. Definitely a favourite choice. Now, we've been pretty positive about the Superman in this review, but there are a few things that, if given the chance, we would change. First up is the choice of bracelet. The bracelet on the 39mm Superman matches the thickness of the case perfectly, but the quality does lag. The buckle is stiff, the links are pretty sharp and feel clunky, and occasionally the bracelet pulls on arm hair. There is also a mixture of finishes going on with the strap and end links versus the case, which does stand out. Next up is the bezel lock. I was unsure whether to add this, as it's such a part of the watch's history, story, brand and design. But just from a practical point of view, it loses a few marks for me. Maybe if the watch was only 150 meters, the bezel lock could be present, but only really there for aesthetics. And finally, the polished case. I mentioned this earlier, but for me the polished case just feels a little too much. Is it likely to be more of a commercial success if it is polished? Probably, but I'd like to see it nice and brushed. Although, if you agree, you could always go for their new Superman French Air Force Steel Limited Edition. So it's probably not going to come as a surprise to you to hear that I really enjoyed wearing the Yema Superman. It's a watch that's managed to cram in historical importance with a high level of practical use into a well-proportioned case, all while looking elegant and classy. The Yema Superman featured here cost €1,099. We'd like to thank Yema Watches for sending this in for review. They also offer this watch with a quartz movement for €390 on a NATO or a rubber strap, as well as an option with raised indices and a blue sunburst dial. Be sure to check out their website for more information and to explore their full range. We'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.